Welcome to the OC. I'm Phil, and this is my co-host Corey, and tonight we are talking about something top secret, deep in the realm of the glorious CIA. And what are we talking about, Corey?
Specifically secret armies, but that's more
Love it.
generally than specifically.
It's more generally than yes, secret armies.
It's the fourth one in the quadrilogy of our Cold War podcast.
Jesus, I have read so much.
We're not talking anymore about the Cold War after this episode. Next one cannot be a Cold War episode at all.
Okay, I don't even know what to do. Oh my God,
Jesus. Okay, well, good.
We'll figure it out. I have time. We have a whole podcast.
I have a whole podcast,
and I will not do anything Cold War. I got to mix it up a little or something.
Perfect, great, and let's try to avoid Cold War serial killers too.
Can it just be regular serial killers? Anyway,
what do we do in serial killers?
I don't know. I find them fascinating. I digress. So tell us about this. Where does our story begin?
Okay, so tonight's episode, for those who are just tuning in, is about secret armies, specifically the concept of stay behind operations. So this is something where essentially you either have like a citizens militia that doesn't advertise itself as a citizens militia, either for home defense, or in the event that something bad happens, you can have them essentially be the plucky resistance. Or terrorist, depending on, I guess, whether you're on your side or not.
A better term as being the person who bombs railways and power stations,
schools and whatever they can.
all of those, those places. So, and when do we see this? At the beginning of World War II, or near the 1940 is when.
So they're the first. There's two notable things. So. Theoretically, this has always been a case. The idea of partisans has always been a case, however, not necessarily as organized, right? So in World War II, also known as the Big One, or the sequel to the War to End All Wars.
Part 2. That's right.
You had the two notable units they had. This does not count like the French resistance or like some of the Czech or Polish resistance. Those were more organically formed by people who were trying to fight back, as opposed to officially. We're talking, this is a government decision. So you had the UK auxiliary units. That's
right. And Churchill was the guy. He was our dude. Old high-waisted pants Churchill. That man wore his fucking pants high.
I know, but he was a stout, like he was a bulldog.
He did look like a fucking bulldog. Yeah,
I know, the British bulldog. Okay. He's like, and good old Winston, great wartime PM. Turns out everybody hated him outside of war. They're like, you know what? We uncaged the mad dog when he wasn't a mad dog, but he was certainly not the.
He was a pissy little fella. But France falls in 1940. Right, France is like goes tits up. Germany comes in, walks all over them, and then
roll over on their belly. Now there's an argument whether they rolled over on their belly because they didn't want their city being destroyed and they were surprised. They were just completely unprepared.
Right.
Who knows?
But this was a preventative measure. What's that? Sorry.
It's a different podcast. We talk about why France fell as quickly as it did.
Absolutely. But that's a history lesson. We don't want to get into that so much, but at the same token, we have Churchill, and he says, holy fuck, there's a good chance we may lose this war. The United States
It was touch and go, wasn't it?
Well, the States didn't come in yet. They come in 41. So you got 39 and 40, not their best years fighting the Germans.
Did you ever hear the joke about the British soldier and the U.S. soldier in the bar?
No, tell me. I'd love to hear that.
Okay, so you got British soldiers sitting in the soldiers are sitting in a bar. And walks some U.S. men. They order a beer. Bartender serves them. They drink it. They go, this beer's warm. What the hell? British soldier says to the American soldier, well, it should be. It's been waiting here for you since 1939.
For 2 fucking years. Assholes. Well, they did donate like munitions and some real shitty planes and stuff, but they didn't really want to get involved. That was their like, it's way over there.
Well, it was because it was a European war, right? So that was they sort of, now it's funny, the irony of the US then, where they're like, we don't want to get involved in continental stuff because screw you guys, compared to how they are nowadays.
Which is, we want to get involved in everything. We a little hands on. So so basically they're saying, okay, well, we've got places like Belgium, we got places like Poland, we got places like what other ones are there? There's tons of them. So there's like 7 in total, right? Like 7 or 8 at the beginning. And they say, well, if they take this country, which they happen to France, so it can happen to fucking anybody. We want to have some sort of resistance inside that can kind of keep our battle going, right?
But it has to be a secret too. That's the problem, right?
You're not creating a These are not military people, right? These are like, well, now I say that, but I would suspect that they have, some military guidance, right? These are
they do. They actually get trained. So what will happen is these plucky, whatever you want to call them, these stay behind units, often are civilian, but get a degree of military training, not surprisingly, in stuff that would be considered not very honorable methods of warfare.
Right. I agree. And I mean, they're being trained to not just do like espionage, so to speak, but they're trained to do explosives, right? They're trained to like assassinate people. So I mean, all the good and juicy stuff. They're being
it's very
guerrilla warfare,
scallywag kind of stuff, right? Like this is not march across the field, engage them in honorable battle. This is like no. Get them while they sleeping, do all sorts of terrible things. Essentially commando-ish stuff.
Right. And now they decided that they would put arms in different areas, right? Am I right? So they would actually stockpile shit, bury it.
They would create caches all over the place. And depending on who was doing the caching, and as we talk about other ones, they had different needs. You set these caches up, and so that theoretically, when the bad guys, Germans, rolled in and took over, they could go in and complete separate chain of command. Nobody really knew who these people were. They were like,
that's right. No,
kind of home guard, but not really home guard in the case of the auxiliary units the British had.
And they didn't really exist, right? Like that was the idea.
There was no
not
paper
on a
trail.
docket, no paper trail, right?
No paper trail. Because what do you think is going to happen? Guess what? I roll into your country. I'm taking all your paper.
Yeah, I'm going to find out who the fuck you are pretty quick. Yeah,
and I'm going to. Your chances are any government is going to roll over, right? I mean, they're going to go, and if they're going to give up state secrets like nobody's business.
Well, and that's so. I think there was also the side of they weren't sure what Russia was going to do when it came down to the war, right? If they were going to flip, and they did kind of flip sides. They were,
flipped it. They were sort of allied with Germany at the start, like in the sense of, hey, you stay on your side, we stay on our side, we're good. And then when Germany screwed them, which they saw coming a mile away, and they were still completely unprepared for.
That's right. Yeah. And I think that I think it's a smart idea. These stay behind. I never really read about these things. So this is all fresh to me. This was all new, and I'm like, okay, well, we'll play with it here a little bit, and I learned a lot actually. And
well, did you learn about the German stay behind units?
So yes, so this is not a
much cooler, by the way, than auxiliary. So
well, and you had a name for it. What was their name? Because you told me
SS werewolf units.
Werewolf units. So these are not just your run of the mill farmers, and these are like fucking SS guys, right?
They were SS guys
undercover.
So it was a mix of SS and actually Hitler Youth in a lot of ways. So what they would do is they would draw from their Hitler Youth, and they would put them through this intense kind of training. And now, whereas at least in the UK, the auxiliary units, I mean, they were trained. Don't get me wrong, but I think for every one really solid, awesome guy, there were 15 other guys that were like, okay, where are the guns so we can shoot stuff, right?
That's right. But of course, they had no intention of using this force because they were going to win, right?
So they were getting so it's funny enough, they were super cocky, but they were also in the element of with the special operations executive was going off and causing all sorts of shit. Now, these were the UK dropping in guys. So they were like, hey, we're going to seed some of our guys there to look for these. So in a lot of ways, the original werewolf SS, the SS werewolf units were more counterinsurgency for the SOE. That's how they sort of saw them, but still they were like, what, big deal. They blow up some trains. Who cares? We're awesome. We're Germans. We're going to do fine.
Right. So in my way of looking at this as an I'm not educated in a lot of this stuff, is that these are like little terrorist. So if you're watching this, I mean, these are not Tim Hortons, but terrorists.
I was gonna say that's a product placement, Phil.
And this is brought to you by Tim Hortons, the maker of wonderful coffee and very fresh donuts. Thanks, Tim Hortons.
Da 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 da. Oh wait, wrong song.
Oh, wait a minute. That's the Ronald McDonald song.
I'm not loving it.
I'm not McLovin. You can call me McLovin if you want. Anyway, so these are terrorist units in your own
Terrorist
country.
Terrorist
right?
units. Totally terrorist units designed in the event.
My one concern is, what if a government's just elected that those people don't like? Would these also be beneficial, perhaps? Because they're right wing, right? These are anti-communist groups.
Traditionally, yes. Traditionally,
Okay.
anti-communist. Sometimes they're considered anti-fascist. I guess unless
Anti-fascist,
you're working for the fascist, then maybe you're not anti-fascist, but
Anti-socialism, right?
again, unless you're on the other side of the curtain, in which case you're anti-capitalism. I don't know.
Capitalism, yeah. Democracy, yeah. Democracy bad. So let's skip now. We kind of so let's skip forward. War's over.
Yep.
Yay, everybody.
Go Joe.
We all fucking kicked the shit out of the Germans. Right. So the Germans are,
and nothing but peace afterwards. It was just
nothing but peace and tranquility. And so begins the Cold War.
So begins the Cold War. The moment the last bullet is fired,
everyone
in World
goes,
War II, Cold War.
What are we going to do about Russia? Fucking Russia's like, we just helped you to win the war. Many people died.
Many people died. Turns out we have lots of people to die. You have lots of people to die.
Yeah. But now you have, the whole of the European Union.
And they weren't the European Union at this point. So
no, they weren't.
Remember that they didn't
is.
become
No.
European Union until like 90s, I believe, like 90s.
The EU, yeah. So,
the
but
EU.
something else forms that we've talked about in the past, right? We've talked about it. Something
G.I.
else.
Joe. No, that's not what formed.
Wait, what? Porn?
G.I. Joe?
G.I. Joe porn? No.
Wait, what?
No, NATO. NATO is formed.
Oh, NATO. That was my second guess. What does NATO stand for?
It's the North Atlantic. What the fuck do you call it? North Atlantic
Treaty Organization.
Treaty Organization. NATO.
Nobody. I don't think anybody ever calls it that because it's
nobody calls it that. This is NATO.
It's NATO. NATO.
Yeah, but I knew. I would have got it eventually. Yeah. So basically, everybody says, okay, we won this one. However,
we won this one.
And Germany, in comparison to, let's say, a Russia, is now at this time it's USSR. It's a big fucking country, like it's made up of a lot of places.
The casualties Russia took in World War II were insane, and yet they still had more troops under arms than like the other armies put together. It was ridiculous.
For sure. Yeah, no, there's no question. They put up a lot of men, and I don't think they get enough credit for that. Like when you think of World War II, and it's not that the Americans did a lot, and the Canadians and the Brits and everybody else, but those Russians came in and kicked some fucking ass.
They were down for the count at the start. Given the fact that they saw the betrayal, they must have seen the betrayal, or ought to have seen the betrayal coming a mile off with Germany.
Yeah, for sure. They attacked Russia. What were they
got pushed back and they got completely decimated. But good old Mother Winter.
Once winter came, then everyone's like, oh,
oh,
you think this is cold? Mm-hmm. Just wait till February.
This is August, motherfucker. This is August.
Your balls are going to fall off. Oh yes, very cold, very, very cold. So they basically, everybody's sort of like, okay, we won, but let's not have the reoccurrence of this. So NATO is formed, right? And I don't know what year NATO is formed. I think it's 47. something.
I want to
along
say it
those-
was fairly quickly, like within 5
Yeah.
years of within 5 to 6 years. Like by
Yeah.
1950, I want to
I
say
have it
again,
somewhere.
I do not have it. I just know it existed, and it was basically it was everybody but Russia club.
Well, and that's it. So, well, yeah. So it was everybody but them. So once again, we're not doing a history lesson. So,
Yeah.
so NATO is formed. We don't need to give timelines, exact dates, but NATO's formed. So you got America, you got Canada, you've got France, you got Britain, you've got Finland, Netherlands. Who else is in that pool? Pretty much.
I think Sweden was,
Belgium.
but Switzerland wasn't. I think Switzerland still maintained.
No,
They maintained their
Switzerland
neutrality,
became-
but I believe Sweden was.
Yeah, which is funny because I believe the Swiss became part of the Warsaw Pact,
Did they?
which isn't. I think so. I
thought
don't
they
quote me
thought
on
they
that.
maintained their neutrality. They
always tried to.
Hearts
always
full of
tried to.
neutrality.
But they also had a secret stay behind army.
What?
What? So did all these fucking places. So every place I just mentioned had an SB, which is the stay behind operations, right? So this is not something that's just unique to Italy. So everyone thinks of these stay behind armies as Italy, right? Because remember you said, well, Gladio.
Yeah, it's a
And
project.
you're
So the big one is Operation Gladio, right?
The big one, which is the one that got fucking blown out of secrecy
by the Italians.
by the
Thanks.
president.
Thanks,
of-
buddy.
Thank you. So the CIA. So well, I don't know if we want to go that far yet. So
I think we
NATO's
will.
formed.
Let's sort of. We had NATO formed, and essentially, there's a very real threat. The communist threat, and
Yes.
not just Soviet Russia, the USSR rolling across. The communist threat is very real. Like this idea that the dominoes. One of the things they said about the domino effect, that if you flip a country to communism, then the next to flip, next to flip, next to flip. And
So here's the
everything's
thing that I
screwed.
read, which was really to me the most important. That's why I said that let's say you have certain countries that won't mind Russia taking over, right? Because part of them is communist and the other half is, social or wanting democracy.
Maybe not communist, but definitely very left socialist leaning, which,
Right.
it's you lean left, you just lean a little more, and eventually you're communist. Right?
Yeah, well, I guess because
Just like if you
is
lean right-
communism left or is communism right?
So, okay, so it's a circle. So this is how I had it
It's
explained to me. It's a
so good.
circle. As you lean left, right? As you lean to the left, you become more socialist, more communist, more. But
Mhm.
eventually, you get to the exact same point if you lean too far to the right, where essentially it's a fascist controlling government that's telling you what to do. So
Right.
really, you have no freedoms or anything. Somebody's
Right.
in control now.
That's right. The government's in control.
The government's in control, and they're
Yeah.
telling you what to do. And this whole
Right.
concept of equality and you're taken care of, that's not important anymore because you've given
No.
up so much control on both ends of the spectrum. You've come
That's
back
right.
around where they hit the same point, and it's
Yeah, it's
and
I
I've heard it as a
get
circle.
that.
That's how it explained to me.
It's pretty. Yeah, I don't understand communism as a whole.
It works great if you're ants. If we weren't individuals who have hopes and dreams, if we could all give it for the good cause. Funny
Well-
thing about communism, originally the leaders of communism said people are too dumb to have power, so we're going to hold on to it, set things up, and once we're done, we're going to give it back.
We'll give it back. I got news for you, and that's why people fight so hard right now with the things that are going on with COVID.
Mhm.
Is that governments don't like to give up power, right? And
Nobody
that's what-
likes to.
No, nobody, but governments in particular. When we're talking now about these passports, vaccine passports and things like that. What are the next kind of steps, and will those ever go away, right? And
Well, look at the state of with Texas with the abortion, right? The
Oh, yeah.
abortion laws, right? Once a right or something is gone, it is incredibly hard to get it back. Now, state's
That's
a little
right.
different because it's a state by state level, which means as long as at the higher level, at the federal level, those rights kind of exist, there's a good chance they'll come back. But once you lose rights to stuff, and we'll talk about that later on when we talk
Mhm.
about Gladio B.
Oh yes, Gladio B.
The whole idea of these rights that we get used to, and the various strategies you can use to control people. But sorry,
For
you're
sure.
saying, Phil,
I don't remember what I was saying now. 'cause
communism bad. I think that's where you're going.
communism bad. Well, communism wasn't intended to be bad. It was intended to be good for all people and make
Well,
all people equal.
Except for maybe
Guess
the
what?
bourgeoisie. I don't think the bourgeoisie make
The
out too well.
bourgeoisie.
I don't think they make out too well. And I think the proletariat is generally doing better in communism than the bourgeoisie.
Karl Marx gave way too much credit to people. that was the problem. He just fucking way too. Yeah, no, we'll have a way of fucking up Eden no matter what you do. So
It doesn't
don't
matter.
just let it go. So
My favorite quote of Winston Churchill is, "Democracy is the worst of all systems except for the others."
Except for the others. Yeah, sure. Whoever the others are. But oh, so here we are. We're left with an untrusting, most of Europe, I guess you would say, like the western part of Europe.
The good part of Europe. Eastern Europe's usually the bad
Well,
part
you
of
have
Europe.
Poland. So and that's the other thing is that Poland is sort of like, and I'm not sure where they are in this because Poland becomes.
I think they're actually Soviet Russia. They're actually the Soviets at this point, but
because
they
that's
don't
where the
wanna be.
Warsaw,
Yeah.
the absolute polar opposite of the NATO is the Warsaw Pact.
Yep.
Once again, not a history lesson, but the Warsaw Pact is basically Russia saying, okay, you fuckers are going to do this. Well, guess what? We're also going to do this. And we're going to do things like Belarus. We're going to do Poland. We're going to
form our own Justice League, basically.
Similar idea. And that if you fuck with any of us, we're going to fuck back harder. And, so on and so forth. And this is where the Cold War, and a lot of people don't understand that Cold War isn't from an action. It's from an anticipation of action. Right. And that's what makes it so fucking everybody starts ramping up.
Well, once it got hot. So the problem with the situation we're set up right now is the thing's called nukes. So if the war ever got hot, once both sides had nukes,
it's actually safer.
It's mutually assured destruction, right? So it's like you're not going to do any tactical deployments of nukes. Because the US actually had a policy when they were saying, oh man, you know what? We don't need troops anymore. We'll just have nukes. Anybody fucks us, boom, we drop nukes on them. Done. I don't care how many men you got. We just blew up your army. And then it's like, oh, they got nukes as well. Damn. I guess we need tanks and men again.
Yeah, here we go. Back to the dark ages.
Back to the dark ages.
I got this state-of-the-art bang bang, but I can't use the fucking thing.
Can't use it.
Somebody's itching. Some fucking crazy old decrepit general is waiting.
They were pushing for it, man.
The little finger.
The tactical deployment of nuclear weapons. They had discussed it.
Nuts.
They saw what they did in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and they were like, man, you know what? Great. So the Cold War is sort of set on that stage that because both sides couldn't really use their big guns without essentially ending the human race.
Yeah.
Now we're in this Cold War where it's all proxy battles.
But you got to be Russia going, okay, they just fucking decimated Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Like, literally one plane flew over and fucking destroyed an entire fucking society. It's just insane. And I don't even know how many people died in Nagasaki. I think it was more than Hiroshima, to be honest with you.
But I think Hiroshima is the one we all know about. Nagasaki.
Hiroshima was a fucking accident, I'm pretty sure. One of them was an accident.
I had heard Hiroshima they couldn't make it to their actual target.
That's
so
right. They dropped it because they were running out of fuel. If they didn't drop it,
they wouldn't get back.
We're not getting back. So we were going to make an executive decision.
There's a city right there. Yeah. I think it's Hiroshima. I don't know. I don't believe it's Nagasaki. I believe Hiroshima was not
Nagasaki was the target, and they didn't make it. They didn't have enough fuel. And you got to think, you got this fucking atomic bomb weighing 9 tons in your plane. I think it was a 9-ton megaton bomb.
Anyway. Well, I don't know the way. I just know one was Fat Man and Little Boy. But
I digress. So
this is the stage we have set.
This is the stage. We've got very untrusting parents right now. Mom and dad, they're kind of like in the middle of a divorce, and the kids are like Europe. East and West. Germany's like, we're fucking done.
Well, they were split, right, between East and West. They were like,
what do we do?
Each have an arm.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah. What I thought was interesting is that these things lasted for forever, right? And we don't really have a lot of information until 1990 when, what's his name? Italy, Giulio Andreatti's
The Italian prime minister. He's not the president. He was the Italian prime minister.
It was a prime
Nice.
minister. Yeah.
Nice. I'm
Yeah.
like Dracula. Sorry, I can't do it.
I do not say blah, blah.
I want to suck your Gladio.
Whoop. Jesus. There is a time and place, Corey.
That's a time and place.
So October, I don't know what it was exactly. It was October 1990. And this all came about because of a judge. Do you remember the judge looking into
the years? So this was part of it. He was looking at one of the bombings. Okay, there was a bunch of massacres. So there's a fascinating time. If you're ever interested, folks, Google the years of lead in Italy. Where basically the country was either blowing up or being shot up internally all the time.
So they find
nothing got done.
Explosive.
Nothing got done.
Do you remember the explosive they found, which was very unique to a certain country? They found C4.
Oh, okay. Yes.
They found C4, which the only country that produced C4 was America. So what they do is this guy, he goes, it doesn't make a lot of sense that, you know, these terrorists could get their hands on such a sophisticated plastique, right? Anyway. And I found that very interesting that this one judge, and I'm not sure his name.
Let's see 1 second.
Do you have him there?
I can find it. Where's my judge?
He was
I just had his name here.
Yeah. I can't remember his name. Anyway, he was fucking smart. Yeah, we'll find it. Oh, Guido Salvini. And
such an Italian name.
Salvini. Guido, of course.
Of course, right?
Yeah. So he found out that several far-right terrorist organizations, were part of the secret army linked to the CIA. So how did they get the C4? Well, through the CIA, of course, who through clandestine projects or operations, basically this was not a military-run program like for these stay behind units for the most part, right? They were SAS, MI6, mostly intelligence agencies.
Oh, they were mostly intelligence. And
CIA,
these
MI6.
far right organizations actually had members go. I mean, you're nice. Another thing about Europe, I've never been. I have been. I've been like Amsterdam, the UK.
Yeah,
but I've never took a train across Europe. I would love to. You can get anywhere in Europe in a day. Just by taking the train. So you can go off and leave Italy and take a train, and next you know you're in France.
For sure. Right?
And they would go and train with MI6. They wouldn't train in Italy. So the idea that the CIA was training. No, they didn't. CIA wasn't infiltrating Italy. CIA would say, well, come to Brussels.
So and then back to another part of training.
Do you want to know some of the names of the far right organizations?
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
La Finesse, National Vanguard, and Ordine Nouveau. Nouveau. N-U-O-V-O. Nouveau.
Bovo. Sure. Yeah. So some of the things I find interesting is that, you're right. They had to train these people. But what if you had people that were already trained? Killers.
No. Would you go off and sprinkle those people amongst these far right organizations to?
I mean, they're good at it.
I mean, you're paying them, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you can get them off the hook, for being dickbag Nazi fucks, right? Yeah. Maybe you could use them. And
maybe you could find use of all these people when
for like clandestine projects that include terrorism, killing, assassination, all the dirty shit, bombing schools, et cetera, et cetera. So in walk our Nazi friends once again.
And again, maybe not so much so the part of this is because Mussolini, right? He was part of the Axis and he had Nazis with him and he had a lot of training. It's fascinating when you look at because you don't kill every soldier and intelligence officer that exists. Guess what? They're
useful.
They transition.
Very useful. And not only are they useful in terms of what they know and how to, get a job done, but they also have a lot of contacts. right?
And they
So
also
a
have a
lot of these,
mindset, by the way. These tend to be people that,
oh yeah,
they're like, yeah, I have no problem. Oh, you're now the boss? Okay,
oh
I'm killing
okay,
for you now. Okay.
yeah, you're gonna put me in a villa in Switzerland. Perfect.
All right. Sounds
Sounds
good.
good to me.
Would have done
Oh,
it for
what do I need
free.
to do? Maybe one day do what you tell me to do and kill somebody? Oh, sure.
Okay.
You name it. Whoever. My mother? All right, fine. Like these are those people. So
Yeah.
and that's what I couldn't believe. That the CIA, not just the CIA. So
No,
we all like to shit on the Americans and say, okay, well, you took the Nazis and you
but they
did
do
everything.
factor in prominently into all of this, right? You
They
can't
really
read
do.
anything about Gladio without hearing about the CIA
Well,
mucking around.
MI6 and SAS. And so you have all these high intelligence. Well, SAS is more of a military.
They're more military. So you're thinking more SO. So it used to be SOE is Special Operations Executive. That became just the Special Operations.
Right.
They were the ones that, from what I read, did the bulk of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I read MI6 as well. 'cause they're
MI6
the-
totally was. They were totally into
yeah,
this.
They're like
in
the
Flint,
CIA of Europe,
but more
Britain.
British.
Yeah, the British. But yeah, so SIS. Sorry, that's my bad. It's SIS, not SAS.
Special
SAS
Intelligence
is
Service.
the Special Intelligence Service. Also with MI6.
Or is it
But
Secret
then
Intelligence Service? I don't know.
yeah. So they also brought in Green Berets to train individuals, right? So they brought in all these people, Special Air Service, which is the SAS. So these are the ground guys. These are like the fucking like, okay, well, this is how you blow up a bridge, right?
But these guys were brought in specifically to do training,
for sure.
and they may or may not have been aware of exactly who they were training.
I would say in all likelihood they weren't.
They were said, we need you to teach a bunch of these guys how to blow up a bridge.
Exactly. And you as a soldier are going to say, yes, sir. And if you ask why, you're going to be told you don't need to know that.
If you're a good soldier, you don't ask why. That's why I was a terrible soldier. I asked why too much.
I just asked why.
I was like that annoying little kid.
Don't ask why.
Why? Because I told you so.
Yeah. Don't ask why, especially when you're Green Beret. I'm sure you just do what you're fucking told.
Okay.
Get it in you. So now you've got this whole stage set from, after the war, you have this progression and nobody hears about it. Nobody knows anything.
Nobody knows about it. So again, these units were set in place specifically under secrecy because in the event that the Soviets rolled through Western Europe, right, you'd want the plucky resistance to be able to live. However, they kind of changed, unfortunately, from let's wait for the Soviets to come and roll over us to,
wow,
hey, those lefties are starting to get some votes. Maybe we should do something about them.
So here's where we start to see, yes, the terrorism based on communism, right? So the world not wanting to, so the CIA, there are accounts where from Gladio, now here was the thing, is that these secret armies were never supposed to be used.
No,
this was through NATO. This is because this is all fucking transcribed through NATO. NATO was aware of all this shit, and these little.
So you say NATO was aware of it. Let's not kid ourselves. The governments in power were not necessarily aware of it. There was a cadre. This is total deep state stuff. But NATO, there were a cadre of unelected military officials.
Yeah,
who knew all about this.
Of course,
like chess pieces on a board, right?
Yeah, it was like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You're going to fucking do this. This is how this works. But they could do things that NATO couldn't do based on, various treaties and things that have been right. So they can get around it. So what we see is now we start to see terrorist attacks in like places like Libya and like all these little, because they can start calling on some of these people that know all these techniques to do things. Right?
Which again is fine when you're going elsewhere. So when you're going off and seeing your guys in places that are like, Libya, okay, fine.
Yeah. But
when you're doing it in your own country because you don't like the government coming in.
Right. So now you start to see this in places like Ireland. You start to see things going on in Britain. You start to wonder, okay, well, what are these, they're in your own country, but you can call on these fucking people to do your bidding. Basically, if the CIA says, okay, in Italy, we want to get rid of this faction because, we're worried about them taking over.
We don't want the communists rolling through Italy.
Right.
Right.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And did you read about the idea of the strategy of tension?
No.
So
well, maybe I did. I think you mentioned
you did. Yeah, you totally touched on it because you've touched on it once or twice.
I was really intrigued by this shit.
You've touched on it once or twice already, talking about what they're trying to do. So part of it is to stage these operations using this secret army.
Yeah.
To create fear, confusion, so that the people are more willing to give up their rights.
Right.
And they're more willing to do whatever the powers that be want. So they want more protection. So they give up more rights, and which makes it harder. And this is what, like you saw this in Nazi Germany, where it gets harder to the point of to actually hold democracy or free elections when you've got.
Yeah. Well, no, you're able to subdue individuals when you, like a whole race of people. Right.
Yeah. Not that the race of people thing happened in Italy, but it was more of a political kettling, I guess you could say, of the leftists and the and the communists, right? So they would go off and they would have these things, and they would sometimes it would be blamed on the far right, but most often it would be blamed on, oh look, the communists did this. You don't like the communists.
Or they would have patsies as well. Right. Where it was like, oh, it's this terrorist cell from, say, Al Qaeda, or, like it's easy to pin a terrorist attack on what we know as regular old terrorists.
Well, so the Bologna bombing at the Italian Bologna Central Station, that was it was apparently an MI6 CIA led Operation Gladio, and it was blamed on the communists.
Of course.
So they blew it up. And I believe this one, I don't know if this was the one that triggered our Guido. I don't know if it was or not.
Let me check.
But it's the only one I've read that is official. Well, maybe there's two. There's a Piazza Fontana bombing too, that says that's basically active terrorism carried out by NATO-backed groups to prevent the election of the Italian Communist Party.
Right.
Which is not the same. They didn't blame the communists for that one. The Bologna bombing, they blamed communists for, which was designed to play into communist bad. We need to do whatever we can to stop communism.
Right. But that was that was like we have to remember the other side of this coin is that Russia and communists were also trying to do the exact opposite of these guys, right? Yes. So their hands are dirty too. Everybody's hands are fucking dirty and blood.
We only know about Gladio because, like you said, your buddy there went off and blabbed his mouth.
Prime Minister. He's like, well, this isn't necessarily true. There were talks about it as far back as because I think it was formed in the 50s. I think Gladio itself was formed in nobody really knows.
It was they believe it for, again, when I say believed, there are still some nations that have never admitted to it. So the UK never admitted to participating in Gladio. They admit that they had auxiliary units, but they say those stood down in like 1946 or 1947.
They also didn't admit they killed Diana.
Or Jeff.
Like and subscribe.
Jeff
who?
Jeffrey Epstein. No.
Oh, Jeffrey Epstein. How cute.
Like and subscribe. That's another episode.
Like and subscribe. We fucking love Jeffrey Epstein. But yeah, no, you're right. But here they are. And the CIA has denied all involvement as well.
Not very nice.
Not nice. Now, did you read about the manual, FM 3031B?
Yes.
So the manual, so somehow I thought this was hilarious. I thought it was awesome. So in the Philippines, in the fucking like consulate in the Philippines, on a fucking board, like a pegboard or whatever it is, this fucking somebody writes on this, from a concerned citizen, and leaves this top secret document into the board, and then someone finds it. And what it is an operations manual for doing all of said things that stay behind people are supposed to do. I think it's a 10-page manual. Like, it's not super involved, but it does give them protocols and all this other stuff. And it was basically CIA, and it was signed by a general. Now, some things that I read said the signature from the general I can't remember the general's name. But it was forged. Some say it was forged. It's probably the CIA. CIA denies that it existed. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I get a kick out of they denied that it existed and then denied that they denied that it existed.
They denied. Yes.
It's just so you track some of the stuff, right? But whether or not you had that element of, is it possible for them? You think about what the purpose of what they did is. Putting this out there, what's the purpose of it?
What's the purpose of the stay behind?
No, what's the purpose of pinning this to a board and faking signatures and everything, right? So you start digging into stuff like that, right? The person
so what they figured was it was an actual person that was part of, one of these stay behind
what operations. I read was that it was our good friends, the Soviets, that were so
that's the other side of this, right? Is that the Soviet, and that's why you can't tell, like, these guys don't even know shit. Like, I mean, if you're CIA, you're probably like, oh fuck, which one of you did this stupid shit?
It's got it board up. You got your board up. You're like, okay, wait a second.
Like, who's dumb enough on my team to do this? And then you go, was it them fucking Russians again? Did they get us again? You guys.
Damn you, Ivan. Oh, you got us good, Ivan.
Who's got us again? I bet you they are. I bet you they sit in a room and just like, that's a good one. We'll get you back next time, you motherfuckers.
That's right.
I don't know.
We'll wipe that birthmark off of Gorbachev's head. It's just maple syrup.
It's like licking a walrus's ass. Anyway. But yeah, so it is. And then now Italy says that they disbanded this military, paramilitary.
The secret army they didn't know about. Don't worry, we disbanded it.
Right. Do you believe that?
And it's not just Italy, Switzerland and Belgium. So there's a bunch of parliamentary, after all this 1990-ish is when a bunch of parliamentary inquiries start going around to say, okay, could you tell us about, do we have one of these? Could you tell us about, well, it's funny you mentioned, okay, so on that point, are you familiar with Operation Washtub?
I am not.
This was the plan. Apparently, it was more FBI because that's their responsibility to set up a similar operation in Alaska in case the Russians came over that way.
Oh, I did hear about this.
So I think about a bunch of crazy, drunken Alaskans. They talk about their one example they used was, the guy we want is that one-armed Kodiak bear hunter who hunts with a bow.
Yeah,
like he's one-armed because I guess if he's using a bow, he's using his teeth. Like that's the guy we want up there. We're gonna get some caches. Like it is just insane. And I actually have what the caches would have essentially had.
Oh, good. Right?
Really? Yeah. So here, what they say here. I got the exact. So this is what the intended cache would have had. Inside each supply were survival goods like 150-foot length of climbing rope, crampons, a parka, Eskimo type trousers, which sounds so racist, gloves, a fur cap, snowshoes, skis, boots, poles, and wax, a portable stove, a sleeping bag, a Mae West life jacket.
Mae West.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah. I don't know what that is. Folks, if anybody knows what
Mae West, the pinup girl.
That's
I guess you need some
maybe plates in the front. I don't know. Makes sense. 100 gallons of gasoline. Stupid imperial system. Maps, compasses, flashlights, signal mirrors, and a canvas canoe with a paddle. They also had dog sled equipment. There was also stuff for insurgency, like a 30-06 rifle with a 4x telescopic sight, a small caliber pistol fitted with a silencer, garroting wire.
Oh, perfect. With one arm. I like to see you choke somebody with one arm, motherfucker.
And explosives that could be used. It could be used if on the cache if it was going to fall into enemy hands. There was also like $500 in gold.
So you mean?
So this is what this is what the typical cache. And they also talked about armored personnel carrier. Like there was all sorts of other stuff. Like, and there were supposed to be hundreds of these that were going to be set up. Initial plans called for 100 supply outposts to be built. Nobody knows idea how many actually got built.
Right. And these things were found. So throughout all of Europe, these caches were in like under school fucking, like they're doing like
one of the best places they found to do it?
No, where?
So they often found it was difficult to track down the caches properly. So one thing they figured out is, hey, what's a place that's got a lot of markers in it?
Graveyards.
Hey, not a lot of people dig up graves. So if we were to dig up a grave, put a cache on top of a coffin or get rid of the
fucking
body, put
genius.
it in the coffin. All we got to do is say,
or buy a plot, buy
Or
plots.
buy a
We
plot.
don't even have
and
to. We don't have to do anything. And put
we go-
fake fucking headstones there.
We have a little service. a little
Military service even. Or John Doe.
Right. So all of a sudden I give you directions and I say, you know, it's where Phil lies. No.
I wonder if there's similar names in every grave. Now that you say that, you know,
You're going to start digging up graves, aren't you? You're going to start
No,
going
not
up
me.
and see.
I don't have
That's
patience.
the kids.
That's a
That's
lot
what
of
the kids
hard
are
work.
for. That's what the kids are for.
Fucking right, make those kids work. Come on, kids. We're going to have to dig up another grave. Hopefully, we find guns.
Hopefully, we find guns. Hopefully, no bones this time. But keep any gold you find.
Well, there had to be a system in place, right? Because it has to be somewhere that you can access.
Well, they talked about in the States, for example, with Operation Washtub, above the tree line. They said above the ridge line or tree line on the mountains, right? So there would be, caves, trapper sheds, like all this stuff they were going to do. And same thing when you're in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
You go into the Black Forest and, you set up something.
Right.
But chances are you're not going to be able to find it or know where it is.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem, is how many of these caches are laying around and never got fucking found, or like they're just forgotten about, right?
Well, not even to say forgotten about is probably the wrong word. It's like they didn't know where it was in the first place, right? You've got this completely decentralized command and control structure in place, like a terrorist cell network.
Very much so.
They're not talking to each other, generally speaking.
Right. That's fucking crazy. But I know they found them, and like they'd be like, well, we just found like guns and
rocket launchers.
Yeah, military. I mean, these are
mortars.
things you couldn't get your hands on as a civilian, right? Yep. So, and then now they're all gone, right? Like, because that's what they told us.
That's what they told us. They figured this out. They shut everything down.
They said, you know what? We're done now. We're done now.
Well, no. Some people said that. Other people said we never did in the first place. What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? Like,
you're talking.
And I have a list of the membership. Like, you've got Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany has its own as well.
Apparently, they admitted to it later, saying, "Yeah, the UK was like, by the way, when we were in your place, we set stuff up,
and we get paid in American dollars. It's pretty fucking cool.
It's pretty sweet.
It's really sweet. I haven't been paid a Deutsch in forever. I get a great paycheck." Yeah. So anyway,
you know the name of the French operation. So we call it Project Operation Gladio overall, but it was Plan Bleu. Plan Bleu. And again, somebody friggin' blabbing, Minister Edouard Dupuy.
Oh yes,
Plan Bleu revealed the existence of the secret stay behind army in France.
That's right.
I believe it was which one was this? The Danish one was called a codename Absalon, named after a bishop.
Oh, Absalon, yeah. Greece was Locke, L-O-K, Locke.
See, these were cool names. Like seriously, some people are like, hey, now maybe not Plan Bleu. Like what? Plan Rouge?
Plan Blue. I would go red.
I guess that's why Blue Nuit. So maybe they're related.
Yeah, or Blue Plan, I guess, if you're I don't know.
The one I was reading about, and I laughed at this one. It was for in Iran.
They have one in Iran.
So this was a stay behind operation. Apparently, the CIA had set up in Iran to help,
shit.
And it did. It was called TPBEDAMN.
Oh yeah.
TPBDAM.
TB. Is it TD BDJ?
TP toilet paper BDAM. That's how I remember it. I don't know.
What the fucking acronym? Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, this was the one. These were the guys that were trying to, bring down, cause problems, but they had set it up in Iran and again, a stay behind operation, meaning you pulled your army. There's no forces there anymore, but you've got little forces. This is more like an insurgency force, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily, Iran was not necessarily a Western Europe country, little Middle Eastern.
The CIA's network is so big, right? Like, you have an endless budget. You can do, could you even imagine? They would have people in offices, like not offices, but like, agents everywhere.
Yep.
Why wouldn't you? So big. It's so big.
But they shut everything down 90s, right? So
Oh, yeah.
90s.
That's all, yeah.
Oh,
No.
wait, or did they? So this is
I don't
where
fucking think they did.
Gladio B they talk about. Now, this comes into more conspiracy land. Gladio B. In the 90s, Phil, who became the new Soviets?
What do you mean the new Soviets? The
Who
ones we
became our new
worry
enemies?
about?
So just look at all action movies in the 90s.
Yeah.
Who
the
was predominantly
Chinese.
not in the 90s. That was more of a later thing.
No, the Iranians.
The Muslims.
The Muslims, yeah.
So all of a sudden, now we're no longer worrying about the communists. We're now worried
about Allah.
No. So this is where they talk about the rise of Gladio B.
Yeah.
Right. That, hey, it flipped over and all of a sudden you had the idea that now Islamic extremism, Muslims were the big enemy. So we got to prevent that whenever possible. So now.
Muslims are very peaceful people. It's a very
the ones that aren't
the
ones that aren't trying to kill you. So the folks, the ISIS folks, they tend to be Muslim too, but maybe they have a different interpretation.
I suppose.
And Allah was very much a, or not Muhammad, not Allah. Allah's God. Muhammad was a warlord originally who was really inspired by the Jewish, the Torah and the Bible to write the Quran. So he used concepts from those, but applied a very convert by the sword kind of.
I don't know very much about any of those religions.
I only know a bit. But they became the new enemies. So this is one of the theories
they are today. That's and then we leave them behind. Like Afghanistan right now. That's fucking horrendous. Those poor fucking
okay, so you want to talk about stay behind operations? So let's think for a second here.
Oh yeah, there's for sure a huge stay behind operation. The Taliban are in for a lot of problems for the next forever. Yeah. So
some people argue the actual Mujahideen is a perfect example of a stay behind operation because they kicked the ass of the Soviets, right? Then Mujahideen became the Al Qaeda that and it linked up with the Taliban and drove out the Americans right after 20 years of not accomplished, of basically saying, okay, we're done, we're leaving.
And I don't know if the Americans, like the actual government, wanted them to leave. I think it was the people that wanted their troops home, right? Because they could have stayed there forever.
I know, but to accomplish what? They weren't. That's the problem. They weren't
for 20 years. What the fuck? And then you just pull out and you've done nothing but fucking disrupt an entire. I mean, it goes
and
to
leave
show,
stay behind. I'm sure some declassified documents.
Can you not
25
imagine?
Years.
Like there were so many Afghanis that were willing to sign up with the states. I mean, it would have been like, it would have been so easy.
And the situation you saw with the Taliban rolling in like almost immediately as the Americans were withdrawing. That was that was predicted. So there are a lot of really smart people involved in all of this. And despite it looking how bad it was, I am certain they're like, okay, we need to make sure we've got our.
It almost seemed like a transfer of power.
Yeah,
right?
But we'll make sure we've got a little surprise there left for them, just in case if we need to activate everything.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, how hard would it be for the states to come back? I mean, seriously, it would be.
Ideally, they don't want to have to come back, right? So this is the idea of these wars are very messy, very long, very expensive. But to fund the plucky resistance that you set up
cheap.
15 years before, that's easy. That's nothing. CIA, that's what they do all the time.
Yeah. And it's like shooting fish in a barrel. They're all set up. They have networks. They're probably Taliban. They've infiltrated the Taliban for sure. These are poor people, and you offer them, things in return for their loyalty and service. I think you might.
But it's not just that. We think of them, as they're all united. Well, I got news for you. If you look in the States, countries aren't as united as we think, right? And there's always tribes.
People jumping on planes trying to get the fuck out of that country. They're not united. They're like, holy shit. This is what you fuckers are supposed to protect us from. And then you just let them walk in here and take over,
China's trying to use that as an example to Taiwan to say, you better smarten up and play ball because look what the Americans did to their last buddy.
Well, and that's it. Yeah. So when they pull it, China wants Taiwan back.
Well, they recognize, there's a one China policy, right? Where generally Most of the West goes off and says, okay, it's one China. Although Trump broke tradition, I think, by actually taking the call.
He addressed Taiwan.
Taiwan, yeah, which is
Yeah.
not that would upset China,
Yeah.
which is good for them. I
Mao
guess.
was like, yeah, you think you had it bad before. We're not sending you any products of any kind.
Or your
Hygiene?
Amazon.
Your fucking hygiene is going to go to the dogs.
Never make
Dirty
toilet paper internally.
fucks. Oh my God. And we're seeing a shortage of everything here. I mean, my business alone, I can't even buy electronics.
Well, the chip shortage is, I think we talked about this previously. There's a lot of factors going on there between COVID itself, and turns out the sweatshops that you produce these chips in are perfect breeding grounds for COVID.
Yeah, it would seem that yeah. Damn it. I wish they'd get back to it. They had like 9 cases yesterday.
Really?
In all of China. Yeah.
They've got it under control.
That's right. Yeah, they got something under control. I think it's the people.
Yeah, that were propaganda.
Yeah. Fires are burning. You can see it from space.
Now we're talking India.
The
Jesus.
fires. Yeah, well, their numbers too are pretty crazy with these new variants and stuff. But well, let's wrap it up then. And or do you have anything to add?
No, I think we've touched on idea of so
this isn't a conspiracy though. I'd like to really point that out. This fucking happened. And it was happening for a long time. And I believe it still is. There's that would be the conspiracy part. We have no proof that it's actually continued.
Out of the quadrilogy, the only one that really sort of has conspiratorial elements to it is the moon landing, which, by the way, really happened. So theoretically, all of them happened. Okay.
Of course.
Stargate happened. MK Ultra happened. The moon landing
Very much
happened.
so. Of course.
Gladio happened. None of these are. No. There's enough evidence to say, these happened. The question with Gladio is, did it stop happening? And
we don't. I think no. I think why would you?
How terrifying is that though? That you have a army that exists that is not answerable to the government the duly elected representatives.
Right. What but listen to this. If I had the capability of having one Gladio, why wouldn't I have 2 or 3? Who knows? Right? Think about that for a minute.
Think of the situation in the States. So put this in your noggin.
Yeah.
The term citizens militia is thrown around an awful lot in the States. Now, how many of those citizens militia? Like, sure, the FBI monitors the extreme hate groups and probably pays attention to the militias. How much you want to make a bet? There's more than a few where, somebody like an intelligence organization of some sort says, hey.
Of course. We like you guys, David Koresh.
I think you've got the I like the cut of your jib. Yeah. Hey, here, we're going to talk to our buddies in the FBI and get them to lay off you. Because there's tons of other ones. There's other dopey ones you can have them go after. They're idiots. You're not going to do dumb stuff unless we tell you to do dumb stuff. Yeah. Perfect.
And perfect. And there's no question. When you kind of laughed, when I said, I bet you never know if Canada has some. I think that every government that has any kind of clout or money, why wouldn't they have something that's kind of a contingency plan?
You just used Canada in the same sentence as clout and money, which I don't know if you look, but we don't got either of those. We got subs that go down that don't come up.
But why not have a ground force? How much does that cost?
Again, this is the idea of
what
is it, right?
Well, who has to come through Canada to get to the United States? So wouldn't it be in their best interest?
Oh, sure.
Right?
Sure.
To have something in place.
Let's not kid ourselves. What's the population of Canada?
35 million.
What's the population of New York State?
About 40 million.
Okay. So here we are sitting next to largest undefended border.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh, that's what I'm getting at.
If you were Canada and saying, hey, if the U.S. wanted to roll in, okay, well, we couldn't really stop them, but we could certainly make it hard. We could make it painful for them.
We have enough guns to make things very, very uncomfortable.
They have enough guns. We just borrow their guns.
Well, they don't have the people. Regular people aren't going to. We would defend our homes, I would hope.
I like to think so. Unless you were getting better deals, like
Yeah.
if they were paying you in Bitcoin, you'd be like, fucking, hey,
Oh,
Bitcoin. It's like
I mean-
heading up to 65,000 again.
I mean, yeah. Really?
It's buoying some of my other holdings.
Oh,
I don't have any
perfect.
Bitcoin because I have to own a physical. I have to own one. I can't justify spending that kind of coin on it.
Yeah.
But I
I'm
said that
just
when it was
saying,
1,200.
you know, Russia could just basically walk through Alberta and come down into the state. We wouldn't even know. I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
It would be in their best interest to protect us.
Oh, well,
mean,
this is why, and don't kid yourself, folks. World War II, for example, the battlegrounds. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's where Canada is that battle. Like if ever anything ever broke out, it would be
Oh,
Canada.
yeah.
Would be they wouldn't be rolling through the states. They'd be
Fuck no.
rolling into Canada, and they'd be stopped. And Canada would be a desolate. It'd be
Yeah.
field, Flanders fields.
Yeah, they would light us up like a Christmas tree.
Now,
I have
thankfully,
no
most of us
illusion
are
of that.
tight to the border, so that's the good news. That the
Kinda.
ones that are close to the border, but there's a lot of area that isn't. So yeah,
I'm not that close to the border.
You're close enough. You can get to you can get
Oh,
there
I could drive pretty fast. But
6
that's the other
hours.
problem is we don't have a lot of exits. Anyway, not that I've thought about this or anything, but we only have a few exits. It'd be very crowded. I'd be better off on my four-wheeler.
Yeah, that's why I want to get my bike license. I'm like, so hey, when everything goes to shit, I can go off and hop on a bike instead of
or just learn how to drive one. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know, but Melissa won't let me get one. So she's like, I'm like, how hard can it be?
How hard can it be? It's not hard. It's just more hard not getting hit by other people.
Well, the idea is traffic is stopped at this point.
People,
right? So
I would drive my bike and people would fucking look at me in the eyes and pull it in front of me. It's a daily thing. No, it's almost like you don't exist. Like it's a bike. It's not a truck or a car. Nobody does that in my truck. Nobody pulls it in front of me, but on my bike, it was like daily. I was just like, okay, I don't need this. I don't want.
Well, you had that little helmet with the spike on it too. So you did look like like one of those little Luftwaffe stormtroopers. So that's probably
had 2 spikes in my assless chaps.
But again, the assless chaps, which by the way, folks, chaps by their very nature are assless because they protect the front of your legs and the inside, not the rear.
True. By nature of chaps being chaps, they are assless.
All right,
I've learned something. Yeah.
So to summarize, Secret Armies, also known as a stay behind operation or SBO, is something that developed probably before World War II, but you saw it in prominence in World War II. Absolutely. Evolved into Operation Gladio to protect Western Europe or to avenge Western Europe, depending on how you look at it, from the Soviet threat, and then eventually leftists getting elected, and then eventually whatever the hell the CIA wanted.
Yeah, became the CIA's little bit of a, toy to stir shit up.
And no elected official, for the most part, except for Prime Minister Buddy there in Italy, who gave away the game, really knew what it was, for reasons as the Prime Minister of Italy demonstrated that you don't tell elected officials things you don't want to be known publicly.
That's right.
So you had this secret deep state cadre of NATO generals who, would gather and plan what they were going to do with these secret stay behind operations.
It's fucking crazy, man. That's our world. It's fucked.
Shitty stuff your government can get up to. And this is why whenever you give people power, folks.
That's right. Speaking of shitty stuff.
So have you figured out, have we delayed long enough to let you figure out what we're doing next week?
I know exactly what we're going to do.
Oh, it's not about the toilet paper thing, is it? Because
no.
Okay, just making sure.
It has to do with September. 9/11.
Is it Labor Day? It's Labor Day.
9/11.
It's the indigenous holiday. Oh, it's 9/11. Oh,
9/11. 9/11. Did it? Was it an inside job?
9/11 conspiracies. That sounds tasty.
That's deep. It is tasty. I think it's tasty. There's so much on this. I mean,
it spirals out of this too, right? So the idea that the Gladio B, right? This is where they talk about the false flag operation, the strategy of tension. How do you want to get
war? It's not Cold War.
You're right. No, you're absolutely right. Russia's fallen at this point. We won. Peace in our time.
Sort of. Now we have COVID in our time.
Sure, but that's peaceful.
If you die.
Death is a peace of some sort.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, we'll do 9/11.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you very much for watching the OC. I'm Phil. This is Corey, my co-host, and next week we'll do 9/11 and talk about planes and shit and how not to teach certain people how to fly them.
Damn you, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2000.
Nintendo.
Theoretically, landing has always been the hardest part.
Flying. They didn't want to learn how to land. Anyway, good night, folks.
Take care, folks.